Ready, set, go!
Coming to you live, it's the AutoHub show with Ian and Jeff. Here we go.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
I was at Larry Pullman's seminar. So happy I came, having such a good time. Thank you so much, Larry.
One of the best trainers in this area for sure. I don't know about anywhere else, but as far as I know, he's the best. So,
told you twice.
Take advantage.
Thank you for having me.
I'm at Larry Feldman's seminar, and what I found is that what he's really good at doing with his knowledge and with his training, he's not filling a bucket, he's lighting a fire.
Ways to improve. Every month we want to improve better on what we did the month before, maybe the year before. It's about how fast we can get the cars done with quality work to get it to the front line, because that's where we make our money. And the bottom line is the longer it takes, the more money you spend. We want to get it down as low as possible. Right now, like I said, we're in a great stage. We're at 4.5 days. In recon, we want to know how quickly we can get the cars out of the recon process and to the front line. The average days in recon and then the time to line are the most important things that we look for. I'm Mike Burrell. I'm Service Director at JM Lexus.
Right, good morning. So let's go to... So it was hard to find a few books. So these are a few that I found. Car Buyer's Bible, Haynes Tech Book, Used Car Buying Guide, and Ultimate Used Car Buying Guide, and Used Car Dealership Startup. So go ahead, Jeff.
Good morning, everybody. Well, considering Larry Feldman has not joined us today, we don't even need the disclosure. So let's just move on. Actually, that's not true. The views and opinions shared today are those of our guests, not necessarily that of the AutoHub show or Nethercott or Jeff Polo. Hey, I don't even have to read it anymore. I'm so good at it.
The show today is Should We Appraise It? And just so you guys know, these are a couple upcoming shows. SEMA I'm going to be going to, and we're going to be going to Used Car Week Scottsdale. Not sure yet on SodaCon, but we may be going to that. And Gail made up had a point about driving sales. We can talk about that as well. So go ahead, Jeff.
Well, good morning, everybody. You caught me while I was mid-typing responding to the Where's Larry thing, but that's very interesting. Well, our show today is Should We Actually Appraise the Show? And it's very interesting. We've had a gentleman actually brought this up to me a while back as a suggestion for a show, and has not been able to make it as the guest, but that's fine because we got the real smart people here. Hopefully he can join in a few minutes. But it's amazing why we should even come up with this. And times are a changing, as I think we've all said this. And in the old days, we used to do, I put a comment in the call flow, so we'll keep it as a surprise later. But it would be, I was taught, you go to the car, you walk around the car with the customer, you do a touch appraisal. Of course, in the old days was, don't worry about that. That will be fixed like real easy. Our body guy rips the fenders off there, don't big deal. You go over, you touch it, you go, no big deal. You do this, you do that, etc., etc. Sort of like what a service advisor should do when they do a walk around with the customer to sell work. Then you drive it, you sit in it, you smell it, you feel it, you open the windows, etc. The question is, what is happening today? So I am going to put this out to the panel. And, it's very funny. Many people here who What's the matter, John? Did I say something wrong? You went, "Oh, my chopped liver." But I would like everybody who's on today, because many of these faces that we have here are regular and you have a little bit of a name. Just very quickly, as you answer this, just say who you are quickly, what your relationship is to us, which is very dear and loved, of course. But here is, the first question. Um, Give me your answer to this question. It is, I just said, why should we be talking about this? This is Car Business 101. Why is this even a topic? And let's go to Peter Smith, because Peter has no opinion. He's generally not controversial, and he's a polite version of Larry. Peter, you're on mute. Damn laptops. You can't see them. They're so tiny.
That's only because I'm a Canadian version of Larry, so we have to play nice and say sorry a lot. So
You're ugly. Sorry.
we call it how it is, but we say sorry afterwards. Too often in this business, we do window appraisals. We walk over to the window, look out at the car, and say, "Hey, that's a 2015 Chevy Impala. It's how many miles are on it? Oh, okay, it's worth $8,000." And we don't even walk up to it. We don't do anything. What that does is it opens up the dealerships to extreme liability. Like it's awful. And I can go back to the previous show that we were on where we were talking about funny stories in the car business. And this one relates to an appraisal. Now, I was working at a BMW dealership and a customer brought in a E36 BMW, four door, 328, black on tan, beautiful car. We appraised it, walked around it, did everything. He handed us a ownership for that car. We didn't match the ownership to the VIN number. We did the deal. He came back to pick up his new car 2 days later. We went outside. There's a black on tan 328, 2 years older, and we got screwed because we put the information from the appraisal in the system. Now that's why you go out, you look, you feel, you take photographs of everything. Now we have the capabilities. There's actually a great product out there called UVI. You can actually drive the car through the appraisal process, and it'll 360 the car and tell you what parts are missing. So there's no excuse today not to do an appraisal because all you're doing is opening yourself up for liability, and that's why we do it.
Well, thanks, Peter. Was there ever an excuse not to do an appraisal?
Never. It's
You know,
it's pure laziness, and I can see John sitting there going, "Oh God, I'm chomping at the bit on this one. I want to get on."
yeah. Well,
It is it is there. It all it is laziness in the car business, and we're a business, and I get shot so many times on this show and every other show I'm on because I look at it and say, hey, you know what, we work in the greatest business on earth, but we're also the laziest people on earth. And people go, no, that's not me, but it actually is. And we see it all the time, and we see it in the customer experience numbers, because people just don't give a damn anymore because they can sell it for list because there's no inventory. And so they don't do proper appraisals. They just say, oh, we're going to give you this without doing it.
well, I have to tell you something. And I will go to John next because I see him chomping at the bit. you know, but I buy 8 to 10 cars a week online myself. There's a little lot I'm involved with. And they do appraisals. It's a great thing now. TradeRev started this great thing where you do live appraisals. And now eBlock's in it. So you get an appraisal if you get the car, because a lot of them just say, well, let's just do it because it's like $35 or whatever the cost is to post it. And then we get somebody else do the appraisal. If you win the car, you get it. And I got one. Believe it or not, I got a van, and somebody had taken a Sharpie and covered up the dash thing where the check engine light was on. They didn't look at the car. They didn't appraise the car. They didn't know nothing. We got it inspected, and it's a Grand Caravan. So we have a Dodge specialist. The guy goes, "Oh my God." He says, "You start it and it clanks and it clacks and it's this and that." And then he sends us a picture. "Look at this." We went back to the dealer, and the dealer goes, "No, it's fine." Turns out after we made a fuss, we went to arbitration, and they said it's as is. I says, "They're lying." Well, they weren't. They swear they weren't. But the bottom line is nobody looked at the car. And it cost us, it cost them, it cost mostly time. We're at $120 for transport or something like that. But it's crazy. So, John, Mr. John Latka, I'm going to go for you for your dulcet tones, of course. You thought I forgot that, and your opinion. And what is this topic?
Oh, I did forget how you referred to my, dulcet tones. When it comes to appraisal, it's really shocking at times how the so-called process goes at some dealerships. As Larry said, sorry, as Peter said earlier, there you go, Peter. I'm referring to you as Larry. As Peter said earlier, it's just laziness for the most part. The other is, I'm sure, a lack of knowledge. There are a lot of people out there put into the position of being a sales manager and or used car manager with very little training and very little knowledge in terms of how to appraise a vehicle. And there are vehicles being appraised by someone looking out a window and putting a price on a vehicle. Now, how credible do you look to that customer when all you've done is look out a window and pick a price out of somewhere and give them a value for their vehicle? It just doesn't make sense. And certainly, there's a lot of people now at dealerships relying on online appraisals and losing business because I've witnessed a circumstance where a customer comes in on a Friday afternoon, manager's afraid to put a price on the vehicle, says we're going to put it on the auction, goes on the auction, but the customer doesn't hear back from them until the following Tuesday, where the customer says, "Thanks, but I bought a car on Saturday." Because
I
someone
was
actually appraised the vehicle.
Yeah, I actually looked at buying a car last year, and I'm still waiting for an appraisal after visiting the dealership twice. The number was a secret, even though on the website it said you can get an easy appraisal number.
And one of my favorite stories of a used car manager appraising a vehicle, someone pulled up in a truck and it had a 4x4 sticker on both sides. So he appraised it as a 4x4 when in reality it was a rear wheel drive truck. He never got in the truck. He just looked at it and assumed based on the decals.
Well, it's very interesting you said this, John. There's somebody's put into this position. They don't have any training or knowledge. Last week, a very good friend of ours, or the show, etc., he posted something, and his name is Asif Premji. And Asif is a second generation, I think, dealer, maybe a third generation dealer in the sprawling metropolis of Okotoks, Alberta, Canada. And population has now grown to, I think, 33,000 people. But it's just south of Calgary. But the point being is, he said when he first joined, he started into the dealership and he figures he shows up in a suit and tie, and dad says, "Go home and change." He started him as a lot guy. After a while as a lot guy, he then moved him on to, a service, something or other, maybe a lube guy. And he moved him through every position in the dealership. And he posted the fact that to this day he has an appreciation. And everything I've ever heard about him is he's a real good guy and his people are taken care of. He's got long-term employees because he does understand what it's like. And he understands when somebody goes and throws you keys and a list and says sell cars. So if that person learned to sell cars that way, how do they learn to manage? So next, I'm going to ask Gail for her opinion on this because you know something, she never, ever, ever gets around opinionated car dealers, and she actually has a background fully in many, many positions in the dealership, but also with Auto, who is the one way, Peter, that they can guarantee they don't get that 2001 as a 1999. Gail, what's your opinion? What thinking about this?
Well, this topic is really actually this topic's very near and dear to my heart because I went around training. I mean, Jeff was one of my clients. I went around for 7 years to teach used car managers how to appraise and price cars scanning a Viato tool, right? So you scan the barcode so that you can't screw it up. It, populates the information. You go walk around the car. And so that tool help them from making mistakes. But the other piece of the puzzle is I worked for a lot of guys that, yes, would sit at their desk and then not actually walk around the car. But what I was taught, so I worked for a couple of guys that were like, no, you get off your chair, you go check the paint, you go check the tires, you go tell the customer to come for a car ride with you if you want. So when I became a GSM, I was told by the owner, this is how you're going to go appraise a car. And I expect you to do this 100% of the time with 100% of the people. And so I just did what I was told because I wanted my paycheck. But at the end of the day, it saved my ass basically from a lot of problems that I could have had later on down the road. So that's my opinion on that. And then regarding the instant, I think someone typed in, what about instant cash offer and KBB? Is that driving the process? Well, it is driving the process, but the used car manager still has to validate the information. So if you're a lazy used car manager and you're like, well, KBB said it's worth this, I'm going to give them this, and you can't walk outside to validate the trade info with the customer or go to their house to validate the info, I agree with everyone. You're just being lazy. You do actually have to validate the process. So that will save you a lot of trouble later on, like a lot of problems and trouble.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's
Yeah,
very
Brian
funny.
had some comments there, Jeff, just so you know.
Sorry?
Yeah,
Brian
Brian
had some
typed
comments
in some really interesting comments about is the process of the management driven by KBB, ICO, and Vroom and Carvana, which it is, but the dealership has to do their validation due diligence, which is what we used to teach them at Viato. Like, yeah, you could take the instant cash offer and pay the customer that, but you still need to go look at the car. It's going to be sitting on your lot. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to wholesale it? You going to retail it? Like, what are you doing with this thing?
Well, it's a very interesting. We live in very interesting times. And Brian, I'm actually going to call on you just for your opinion on this, if you're there, and tell me what you think. I do not see you though, Brian.
Well, yeah. So I just typed in there. I mean, what we found, and most of my experience was primarily within Ford and Lincoln dealers for about 7 years when we were rolling out digital retailing. What we did with the KBB instant cash offer was we used it as a third party validation tool, um, because it basically gave the used car manager, whoever was providing the appraisal, kind of a backstop. If ultimately they did an ICO and did a walk around with a customer, and KBB could, beat their offer, well then let the car go, and you've already done the validation. You send it on its way to the KBB auction. If you could beat it by 250 $500, the customer was happy. They have a third party validation. It helped you have a baseline, so that you can do a better walk around. Gave you, because KBB gave pretty heavy guidelines as to what they expected for a walk around, of what they would take and what they wouldn't take and what you had to validate, so that ultimately it didn't get to the auction and they refused it because it didn't meet ultimately how it was evaluated. But it gave, to Gail's point, it gave that process. It gave them the tools to walk around, know how to evaluate it, what to look for, what to evaluate, and then gave them that backstop, from a customer experience standpoint. Also helped them from overpaying, but also helped them from underpaying, and provided a great customer experience.
Terrific. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Ian, I'll get you go with the next question. Maybe you can hit Don up now that I got him with his He's not paying attention. But Ian asked the next question.
Cleaning my eyeglasses so I could see better.
Why don't dealers do proper appraisals, in your opinion? Don?
So this is a good question. I had a 2020 Mercedes GLB 250, and last year in the middle of the pandemic, I was trying to sell it to dealers. I took it to 7 dealers. Only 2 dealers actually did an appraisal, and only 1 dealer actually drove the car. Okay. CarMax is the only dealer that actually did a real appraisal and drove the car. The only dealer that went outside and checked the tires, checked the wheels, went inside the car was Germain Toyota. They used their little machine and gauged the tires and
Pardon me a second, Don. Just a second. Germain Toyota, who was widely praised as one of the great operators, they didn't drive the car?
No.
Wow.
And what was their excuse? Like, what was the reasoning?
That's wasn't part of the process. That the
Oh,
car was in good enough shape that they didn't need to do that. It's still under warranty. However, their little trick device was more severe than the Mercedes dealer. I just had the car in for service recently, and for Mercedes, and I have to tell you, if that car needed tires, that car would have gotten tires at the Mercedes dealer. Their device said that the car needed 3 tires, and also said it had 3 warranty checks, which it didn't have. Also said that I was missing a key without asking me. They deducted $300 for lack of electronic know your key. So the person that appraised the car did a disservice to the consumer. They didn't know who I was at that point.
Well, they're a
And-
disservice to everybody. They're a
And
disservice
was there a
to the
range?
company.
So
Was there a range in values? Did the person who
no,
tried
no,
it
no.
have a more
It was
accurate
the
value?
it was the lowest number I received, as a matter of fact, at the time. So, and I ultimately wound up selling it a year later. 3-1 wasn't it was up in June. I sold it to the Mercedes dealer down the street in the end of April, and he also did not drive it. Relied on his service records. He looked it over. I had some damage on a wheel well, scrape, and 2 scrapes on a car. Didn't deduct for the scrapes. He gave me $2,000 more than turn in. So I turned it into him and got a $2,000 check.
So let me just jump on there for a second. Again, it runs back to what I said originally: laziness. The people are making an excuse for their experience as knowledge, and they're using that knowledge excuse as a reason not to necessarily go to the car or drive it. They can say, hey, the car's got 20,000 miles on it. What do I need to drive for? It's going to drive like every other 20,000 mile car. Well, you don't know if that $20,000 mile car has a bent frame and hasn't been declared. There's all kinds of things that we just don't do. When, as Don said, there's all kinds of gadgets out there. When I was getting rid of one of my Porsches, a guy came to look at it, plugged in the OBD2, and was able to tell me how many times that I took it to Redline, and
Wow.
basically told me exactly the DNA history of my car, as in how bad it was driven.
But
and
he
how
still didn't drive it, did he?
He didn't have to. He knew everything at that point. But it's again laziness. It just comes down to jumping over steps, and we say that not just in the appraisal process. We say it in the sales process. We say it in the service advisor process. All the processes that we deal with in the dealership world, right down to social media. And Gail will say that we'll skip steps in social media all the time because we just get lazy. And And the excuse that we give for our laziness is we're too busy. Well, that doesn't work either, because the digital transformation of this world has made everything that much easier. Like, if Larry was on the show, he could go back with me and we'll talk about dealers searching for cars 40 years ago on microfiche. It's easier now than it ever was, and we're just skipping steps.
You know,
But it's
I have
also
to
the
pipe in.
gathering of information, like the lack of gathering information, going out with the customer in a car, looking at what's in the glove box, visually looking at the car. But go ahead, Jeff.
Well, if you picture this, 20 years ago, as a Honda store, you took in a used Civic as trade and you didn't appraise it. And there's a problem. You throw it on, you sell it, nobody cares because they want the car. Right now, there's nobody suffering because of a stupid appraisal. If they screw up, they post it online. Here's the thing with the auctions. If they post as is, short of that car blowing up before it gets to you, actually before it leaves the other dealer's lot, they get away with murder, because their arbitration rules say as long as it moves under its own power. So if you have, for existence, a 2020 frame damaged Corolla and you declare it as damage over 3,000 or whatever your jurisdiction requires, that dealer will, first of all, they'll spend it. They'll look it up in the Carfax. They'll see, oh, it's had an accident, and boom, you're SOL. So you know what? In a way, nobody suffers. In my opinion. Gail, you're going to say
I have lots to say right now. I have so much to say. Okay, going back to what Peter said, the whole laziness thing. Okay, so it starts with the GM and the dealer principal and who they hire and setting expectations. So the guys I worked for laid out my expectations, taught me how to appraise a car, and said, you better do this. Now, how they inspected what I was doing was they would open Viato. Like a GM can easily open Viato. They could look at trade ratio 1. So you already know that if your used car manager is not winning trades at like 50% in there, 40, 50%, they're missing car deals all day long. And number 2, you can measure their cost to market. So if they're paying too much money for a car, their cost to market is going to be 90% or higher. It's not going to fall in the 80 to 90% range. So the GM and dealer principal, if they're not doing these behaviors, they need to start, or they need to go to a conference where they learn how to use the Viato tool to inspect what their managers should be doing. And then hiring or firing the person based on their performance. So Viato was unbelievably eye-opening for me, because I would go into, so I was in a Mazda store when I was a GSM, and there were 22 used car managers, or like, I don't know how many used car managers. Well, I would go in their Viato, and if they weren't paying enough for trades, I would call their customers and find car deals, pay more money for the trades, and then steal the customer, basically. So like, there's so many ways you can get car deals using that tool. And the laziness, if you're an owner, you can make it go away by inspecting and setting expectations, I would say. That's what I would do if I was running a dealership. I would open up that tool and sit down with the manager who's, and be like, what are you doing? Anyway, that's like Gail's 2 cents on
Gail,
used car operations.
You keep going. It's very funny. Every show, we keep going back to one individual for everything we talk about. Who is that individual, Peter?
Which one?
One individual, not one name, one individual in a dealership.
Oh, whenever the owner or GM.
The owner.
But you are the leader of the pack. Set the pace. Like, it's not that hard. I'm the leader of my pack, and my employees walk into work and they know what they're expected to do. You need 25 car dealer demos. You need to close 15% of them. You need to bring in 10,000 in revenue a month. Like, if you don't tell them what's expected of them, they're going to be lazy and not work, period.
And if they don't do it, whose fault is it?
The stakeholder. The stakeholder is always the one that, and we go back to the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink all the time, because that is the truth. The SEALs don't look at the lieutenant as being the challenge. They look at the admiral as being the challenge, and it always lines right up to that point. The stakeholder is the ultimate accountability for the dealership, and unfortunately they don't manage accountability downstream properly. And I was talking with Christine Robertson the other day, and I think she's out of the Carolinas, and we're talking about GMs not taking phone calls, and it's like,
Notorious.
why are not
Notorious.
GMs? Why? Because there's a number of different reasons why they're not taking phone calls. Fear, they don't want to be sold, they don't want to be shown up, they don't want this, they don't want that. But in all, they're looking at the negatives. They're not looking at the positives by saying, "Hey, I can improve the process if I take this phone call." We need to, why do we go to NADA? It's not just to go out and have drinks and meals. We go there to get information and more knowledge. Why are you not encapsulating that in your daily routines? I don't understand. And it's always the stakeholders. And that, again, I agree with Gail 100% on that.
No question. No question.
So, do we want to get Dave Jackson's viewpoint on this as a dealer? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, Dave's on the call. He's the boss.
Yeah. Dave, give us your opinion.
Davey, he's hiding. He's shy.
Oh no, he's coming on.
I'm coming.
Oh man, am I glad you were
there. He is.
Now we can see his face.
Oh man, look at that
I hear
shirt.
I hear it's your birthday today, Jeff.
Well, thank you.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. 13.
God, you should probably still have your initial processes carved on a tablet, right, with a hammer.
They call me Moses.
5 steps to a stale on a tablet. You know, I'm hearing these comments about guys being lazy and all this stuff, and I don't think so. I don't think guys are lazy. I mean, I've been buying cars in an auction. I've been buying cars everywhere for ever and ever and ever. I mean, I've never driven a car in an auction and nobody else has. I've never driven a car on TradeRev and nobody else has. I mean, everybody's using TradeRev as an appraisal tool right now. You take the car, the guy comes in, you throw it on TradeRev, you get your number, and then you work with that number. I mean, you can get an appraisal live at any time, and nobody else is driving the car. Sorry?
Do you run them as is or buy them as is?
You put them on TradeRev as an appraisal. That's what you do with them, right? And they just bid up. So, I mean, nobody drives a car. I mean, I still drive a car, okay? But I'm just saying the process these young guys have now is totally different than the process that we in this group all grew up with. Now, Gail being the exception, but I mean, Gail, you've been around for a long time too. I mean, I met you years and years and years ago at a used car conference, but the process has changed a little bit, and I don't think it's laziness. I just think it's process. I think the processes have changed, and I think we have to adapt a little bit to the process. Yes, we should still drive the vehicle. I agree 100%, but I don't think that it can be classified as laziness. I really don't.
No, I think it's part of the negotiating. In the one instance, they're looking for more wrong with the car because they feel it's a Mercedes and I'm going to be looking for a big number, which I was. And I think the other dealers I went to see do start with the information they're getting from MMR or whatever, and it is part of the process. Until you're ready to sign on the line, that would be the instance at which now they're going out to look at the car. I mean, I'm in Florida. It's hot or it's raining. They're not going outside right away.
I don't think that to me. Well, I would have a hard time believing that had anything to do with it, really. I mean, if I can't believe that they wouldn't look at the car. But that's a whole different story. But honestly, I don't think it's because they're lazy. I think it's because their process is messed up, not because they're lazy. It's nothing to do with whether they're lazy or not. I think it's the process that's the problem. I mean, I don't know. I just hate it when we start slamming used car managers and car dealers and everything else because we're the big evil guys. You know,
it's not slamming people, Dave. It's
I feel
actually,
it is.
I appreciate that, but where we look at it, and it you might, like I tend to say, there's the 10-80-10 rule. The 10% of the people are going to do the best job, 80% are going to do an adequate job, and 10% are going to do a poor job.
That's right. So why should we spend 90% of our time talking about that 10%?
But
Exactly.
but on
Like, good
the
for them.
other
I hope the
side,
guy next door is one of the 10.
the other side of it is when customers' expectations are at an all-time high because of the cost that they're paying on cars. And the reason why I got back into this business was I actually had to go out and buy a car, and you're a Chrysler dealership, right?
Yeah.
So my best friend used to be an ex president of Chrysler. He ran Chrysler Financial for ages. I can buy my car under his PIN number, as he still has pins to give out every year. I worked for a Chrysler dealership for 7 years. As such, I went out to buy a new Jeep Wrangler. And when I went out to buy my Wrangler, I went on Jeep's website and I knew exactly where every single Wrangler was going that I wanted. I contacted those dealers. I explained my experience of being in the business for over 30 years. I said, hey, I understand inventory controls right now. I'm going to pay list price for it. I can wait and get it under the pin, but I need the car now. So I'll pay list price. Just here's my credit card. Buy it. I'll buy it. 3 Jeep dealerships turned around and sent me contracts at $5,000 over list. After negotiating with me to sell it to me at list, I went in, and every single experience level that I've had of over 12 dealerships I dealt with that day, those days, they were absolutely the worst experience I've ever seen in the car business in 40 years. Now, that's not saying every Chrysler dealership is a poor dealership, but I'm saying the dealerships that I dealt with were poor because of the way they acted. Now, that has nothing to do with the appraisal process because I didn't have a car to appraise, but I'm just saying that those dealerships fell into the 90% low, not the 90% high. So that's what we're discussing here, that people, even though that your dealership might follow the exact process every single time, it might not, you might be a anomaly right now.
We could have bought it from Dave.
I don't think I'm an anomaly. I don't think I'm an anomaly. I think that the way that business was conducted during the pandemic for 2 years does not define the car business. It was a different time. Different things were going on. It was just a totally different experience. Number one, you said you had a PIN. Well, if you had a PIN, I can't sell it to you for 10 cents more than invoice. That's the way the PIN program works. The preferred program, I have to sell it to you at invoice. I can't sell it over that. Second thing is, I did a lot of preferred programs during the pandemic, but you had to order it. I couldn't afford to take a $5,000 vehicle that I'm going to make $5,000 on and give it away. Right. I had to make money on it because I wasn't going to get 50 of them. I was going to get 5 of them. So I had to make my profit. So I don't think the last 2 years really defines the car business. And you see one of the biggest problems that we're seeing right now, not problems, one of the situations we're seeing is the huge migration of salespeople away from dealerships, and how hard a time everybody's having getting salespeople and everything else. I think that's simply because they weren't salespeople, they were order takers. I don't like, well, there's a red one. Well, the red's not so bad, I'll take it, because if you didn't want it, somebody else would. And there's still that are in that position. That's why dealers had markups and I'm trying to remember what the verbiage was for the extra
ADM.
Market adjustment.
Market adjustment. I've never done a market adjustment in my life, nor would I ever. But hey, that's up to each individual dealer to do what they want to do. That's up to you. But I just don't think we can define the car business over what's happened in the last 2 years. As far as even appraising a car, I mean, my God, you dealers that had 100, 150 used cars on their lot have got 60, or 40, selling, dealers that sold 60, 65 cars a month have 20 on their lot. I mean, drive the car. Do you need to drive the car? I just need the car. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that's a problem,
I
and
just
that's
need
a
the
big
car.
problem.
I need
I
the
just
car.
need the car, and
I need
then
the car.
yeah, what's happening is you need the car, then you get it, then you discover there's $6,000 in recon because you didn't drive it. And I'm saying you one
Well,
didn't.
you're not going to be $6,000 in recon because there's lots of tools. Like you said, there's lots of tools out there that you can look at. You can look at a Carfax report and you can get the service history. You can, if it's your own customer, obviously you have your own service history. You can look at Vauto. I'm not a big fan, but you can look at Vauto. You can look at Carfax. You can look at DVR. I mean, KBB. I mean, KBB to me is, it's like the black book. Nobody uses those anymore. You know what I mean? It's a different time. It's a different market. You know, I mean, Jeff, you've been in the car business long enough. You know, I mean, when you walk to the auction, when you and I used to stand on the block at the auction, I never in my life saw you pull a black book out.
Yeah.
Why not? You know what I mean? Like
because I just waited for you to finish bidding,
Yeah.
and then I bid one higher.
Then you overbid me. Yeah. No, I'm just saying. You know
Price
what I
is
mean?
right.
You know,
You know, the
it's
worst part about what I hate about online auctions now, is you're not sitting there going like this, going, I don't like him.
yeah. Well, I mean, shit, they don't even drive the cars through the auction anymore. You know, I mean,
Oh, I know.
so. I mean, you're buying cars from a picture and and driving the car is the issue. I don't think so. I think that the breakdown is not so much driving the car. I think it's the whole process. How you appraise a car, looking it up on your Vauto, pulling the Carfax report, looking at your market reports, looking at what you're selling, looking at what your competitors are doing, looking what other things are advertised for or selling for in your area. Looking at all that stuff is more of a process, you know. But I mean, the guy you walk in and you want to sell your car and he pulls up I don't know, whatever tool you want to use, a KBB, and he looks at it and it says it's 25 grand and goes, yeah, I'll give you 23. Well, no, you're not going to deal with him anyway, right? You know, that's being lazy. The guy that goes out, walks around the car, pulls the VIN, gets a Carfax, does all of that stuff.
You know, it's funny. I have to, before we move on to the next question, I remember in the 90s making a salesman punishing him by making him go shopping for cars because he used to use a tricorder, if you're a Star Trek fan, to decide if the customer on the other end of the lot was a buyer or not. That reminds me of the tool that Jermaine uses there, Don. Oh, that car. Yeah.
Gail had a thought there, I believe.
I do.
Yeah, you had a comment, thought.
Gail, you always have thoughts.
Is it what I was messaging you before regarding process? Yeah. So what Dave was saying is, I mean, it's right. It's process issues, and lack of process in the dealership. And then it's like looking at, okay, well, who's responsible for that process? So why do the people not understand the old process, the new process, and then transitioning people into a new process? That's really hard. It's really hard to change behavior in a dealership for people who are accustomed to doing things one way, and then new technology comes out and you're like, by the way, I need you to change your entire process. So that was just my thoughts when Dave brought up process, because it is.
But it's like Dave said, during the pandemic, nobody had to do anything to sell cars and make some money. And, you know, one thing, Dave, tell me if I'm wrong, please. As a Chrysler dealer, you weren't as bad as many of everybody else. Chrysler still kept pumping out those Ram Classics that had one computer in them, and like they were going crazy. And it still exists today, though. If you know, Dave, for fun, if you ever want to go see your friends at Toyota, et cetera, some Honda stores, they don't care.
Jeff, I look out my window and I see my friends at Toyota, and I see my friends at Ford, and I see my friends at GM. I can count how many cars they have on their lot.
Yeah. By the way, I've got to commend you because you're one of the old guys like us. Your office looks out onto the lot and to the competition, and a lot of places they don't.
Well,
you know,
a lot of their offices are on a boat somewhere, right?
So no ivory tower for Dave? No ivory tower? Okay.
Hey, you've been in my office. It's no ivory tower.
Oh, I know. I'm just kidding.
But you know what, though? All crap aside, Dave learned the right thing. And yeah, you know what? Maybe you don't have to drive every one of them, but you at least do something to make sure you've done your job right, because there is no protection of you.
Like Gail
And
says, it's the process, and it's driven from the top, and everybody wants to give the facade that we're running a democracy here, but at the end of the day, it's a dictatorship.
yeah, we talked about that. I don't know if you heard it, where we said it all lies with the person at the top, and if the person at the top isn't given directions, that boat's kind of going in circles, or worse, it's going
The
like
boat's sinking.
The boat's, Dave and I are like, the boat's sinking.
The boat's not
Big
going
time.
anywhere. It's going, actually, it's going one way. It's going down, and
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, well, and I do think that this whole circumstance has created a lot of very, very inept people, because they've just making money. Like you say, my days with Toyota, I was so impressed at how involved Toyota was, how so concerned Toyota was that the customer got a great experience, right down to things like not necessarily appraisals, because I remember back to Access Toyota, where Toyota was concerned, but the dealer didn't care because they couldn't make any more money or less on it. But it does lie to people are getting lazy, and you got a good point, Dave. You can post that car on Trade Rev, you can get an idea what it's worth, but if you decide to take that bid, do you run that car as is without making sure you got a car you can sell to somebody and make sure your butt's not on the line?
well, I mean, to go out and take the pictures of the car and take the VIN and pull the Carfax and do all that stuff, I mean, it takes just as much time to do that as it does to drive the car.
Yeah.
So it's again, I go back to not laziness, process. It's just a process.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. I mean,
by all means.
you got all these young guys that are buying cars. You got all these young guys that are used car managers. And I say young guys, I mean, because they're younger than me, but I mean, they're not really young guys, but they're younger guys, and they're buying these cars. And this is the process they've grown up with, right? This is the process that they've gone with, I mean, I remember years ago going to the Toronto auction, and the black book guys had their black book hats on, and they stood there and wrote down every single vehicle that went through the auction. I mean, that's how they got their numbers, and I mean, and using auction reports right now, basically you're using reports off of vehicles that people can't sell, right? Most of the stuff at the auction, if you're running something to the auction when nobody's got any inventory, you're running it for two reasons, right? You stole it, or you paid too much for it, because anybody can sell anything retail right now. Well, look at how many lots have got 19 or 2008, 2009 vehicles on them right now. You'd never keep that stuff before. Never would you keep that stuff.
Well, I have to tell you, we have in our little lot, we have a favorite Chrysler dealer. We like to buy stuff because their shop just condemns every Hemi with a tick, and every diesel engine they condemn, every eco diesel, and we buy them from them, run it through our Chrysler guy before we buy it, and buy them because they're so scared of it.
Yeah.
And if you get somebody who knows what their stuff, but again, they're so busy. Who do they care? What do they care?
Well, I can look at the numbers this morning. Tell me who's too busy.
I haven't seen them. Bad. You look like you're really busy with that sunburn.
I was
in sense of time, we've got a few minutes left.
I was out all day yesterday, and I had this roof down, and I didn't have the sunscreen on. So
I don't know. I think I can see there's some in your chin. I think you're on a boat.
No, I was on a boat. I was not in a boat.
He's like, I wish I was boating.
It's actually windburn.
Yeah. Well, you wore a white shirt, so you know what? Come on. You could have worn a red one. You would have looked better. Ian.
So in sense of time, Jeff, just some final comments. So if you want to start.
You know what? There's a very lively show, and thank you, our guest. That we had one guest that was going to come and didn't show up, and that's even better because something. This was very lively from very smart people. I'd like everybody to mark down October. Where did it go here? October 3rd, we're going to have a show on how to be a good dealer, principal, or GM, and I think this brought up something. We had an open slot there.
No guests that week. No speaker.
No. Oh no. Well, it's October, so we're looking for some people. I thought.
Yeah. You're trying to find one 5 months in advance, are you?
No. It's only Dave. It's July. It's 4 months. No, but I think it's very interesting when I go 5 months in advance, they never show. Guests never show. And it's hilarious. You know, I've had people that have reached out to me to say, I want this topic on this show. Can I be on your show? You betcha. 2 weeks before, I'm sorry, I am in Monaco or whatever it is. But I think we should do a little bit of a master class there because frankly, common sense has been lost in many people, except for Dave, of course, in a dealer principal or GM position. And unlike Dave, that worked his way up all the way up and had a great guy that he worked with, a lot of people are told, okay, let's see, GM, you're top salesman, you're GM now. And then they're thrown into the water. But thank you. Peter, final comment. Mute.
You're muted.
I'm working in a dealership today, so unfortunately I keep hitting the mute button so you don't get the pages and everything else that go on behind me. Like always, I appreciate sharing the screen with so many automotive professionals that you guys bring on the show. The intelligence that we gather from our mutual opinions and sometimes debatable opinions brings a wealth of opportunity and insight to the people that watch your show. So I really appreciate it, and I look forward to every single week we're there.
Thank you. We love having you. John.
Well, I can tell you from the used car perspective that over the years managing at dealerships, I made a lot of mistakes appraising used vehicles. However, fortunately, I made more good decisions than bad decisions, so we were ahead of the game. My favorite one is when I appraised in the early 80s a Toyota from the late 70s, and I thought it was at the Toronto auction, and I thought I was bidding on this black on black 5-speed Celica that was gorgeous. I thought it had 60,000 kilometers on it. It had 160.
Yeah. Yep. They didn't have the old 6 digits, man, or 7 digits.
Anyway, we ended up getting out of the car with a minimal loss. But I was once told, you're going to make mistakes. As long as you make more good decisions than bad decisions, we should be okay.
Yeah, thank you. I was once told if you haven't made a mistake, you're doing something wrong.
Oh, for sure.
And Gail?
Oh, and when you do make your mistake, embrace failure and just learn from it. One of my mentors in the car business used to be like, Gail, hold that failure real tight. And if you need to cry about it, go ahead, but then learn from it.
That's for sure. And as Auto showed, you've got statistics to say if you're not making mistakes, then you're not getting enough deals.
Yeah. And you can easily, I hate to say this, but you can bury one used car mistake. You can bury that somewhere. You can make that go away.
No, Dave, you don't do that, do you?
I have a shovel right here. We bury a lot.
Dave, final comments. I thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, you know what? This business is changing and so much every day. Every day it's changing, and there's lots of new tools and new ways of doing things. And I think we have to all embrace all these things that are coming and try them and change and adapt to them. But we can't keep going back and saying, "Oh, we used to do it this way." We used to. I mean, we used to. It's changing so much, especially with electrification and electric vehicles, and I mean that's going to be a whole new appraisal process, isn't it?
Yeah, we have 100%. Time allowing, we actually had that question, and that's a scary one right now. It's very scary.
All right, here we go. We're out.
Thank you all.
Have a good one. Happy birthday, Kenny.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Cheers. Take care.
Guys, I'll be in Vancouver later this week.
Look me up, please. Ian's in Calgary now.
Oh, okay.
He finally saw the light. He's in Alberta now.
I'm heading to Kelowna for a week for my mom's 70th. So I've never been to Kelowna. I'm very excited.
Kelowna's nice. But Ian's got to go shopping for a cowboy hat today. He's got rid of the ball cap.
There we go. And if you're here, look me up. If you can get a coffee, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Take care.
See you guys.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.